Evening and very warm welcome to everyone who has gathered here for another round of discussion on Talking Films Online. Talking Films Online, or TFO in short, is an informal coming together of academics, teachers, students, researchers, filmmakers, and cinephiles interested in cinema, more importantly, interested in talking and writing about cinema. The online group came together quite spontaneously during the pandemic and lockdown in June 2020. Dr. Geeta Vishwanath and I have been coordinating the activities of TFO since its inception, with people like Sanjay Kumar, Sridhar Mudugu, K. Paniraj, Ajanta Sarkar, Tarakeshwar VB, Yagnashri, Rasha, Madhurima, and many others who join the weekly discussions and enhance the quality of the discussion. So far, we have organized over 200, I think this is the 204th online event, which includes weekly discussions on a pre-decided film, besides a few month-long festivals and discussions. In fact, this is the first film in the Kannada movie month on TFO. So this whole September, we are discussing Kannada cinema. For instance, this year we also had a Farmers Film Festival in January, and in March we had a series of discussions on Kumar Shani's films as a way of paying tribute to him. Sometimes personnel from the film industry, such as directors, cinematographers, actors, join our weekly discussions. Filmmakers also often make available their films exclusively for TFO members to watch by generously sharing links to their films, and they have joined the discussion. We've had directors like Jayant Cherian, Girish Kasarvalli, Adur Gopal Krishnan, Aparna Sen, Anjali Montero and KP Jaishankar, Karan Bali and Amol Palekar joined the discussion. I think today and the next few couple of weeks as well, we will have directors join the discussion. During June this year, to mark the 4th anniversary of TFO, we had organized the 4th smartphone short film competition for students between 18 and 25 years of age. And we had a grand awards ceremony where the winners of the competition were announced. Soon, we are making preparations for organizing the first TFO International Seminar on Indian Cinema in the Digital Era, Continuities and Discontinuities, in collaboration with FCT Baroda on September 30th and October 1st this year. Our aim is to get a conversation going around cinema and to get as many people involved in the process as possible. With all our events being online, anyone and everyone interested in cinema is welcome to our forum. We have a blog called talkingfilmsonline.wordpress.com where we encourage all kinds of writings on cinema. We also have a YouTube channel called Talking Films Online where you can watch some of our discussions. We are on Facebook. TFO is a private group on Facebook, and we also have a WhatsApp group as well, which is where we communicate our weekly discussion notices. Today, as a part of the Kannada movie month on TFO, this September, we will discuss the Kannada film Blink. We are joined in the discussion by the director of the film, Srinidhi Bengaluru. Srinidhi is a writer having written 3 feature films, 8 plays, 5 short films, 12 short stories, and 15 street plays. So far, he has directed 1 feature film, 12 plays, 5 short films, and 6 street plays. As an actor, he has performed in over 40 plays, working with various amateur theatre groups. In the digital space, he has ventured into content creation as a YouTuber. He has written and narrated more than 15 audiobooks, directed 5 short films, and has conducted interviews with filmmakers and edited indie songs and audiovisual series. He has conducted film and theatre workshops for school children and college students at various summer camps and institutions. He has also worked as a voiceover artist, lending his voice to various projects. He has participated in national theatre festivals and has won a number of awards, including being recognized as a young achiever and honored with the prestigious Master Hirannaya Award. Welcome, Srinidhi Bengaluru, to TFO. This evening, the discussion on Blink will be initiated by Vishnu V. Vishnu is an assistant professor in the School of Social Sciences and Humanities, VIT AP University. He has a PhD in film studies from the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. Again, one more of our proud alumnus. His primary areas of research are Indian cinema, genre studies, popular culture, and science fiction. His PhD work has been on the discourse of science in cinema, we are all eagerly waiting to listen to you, Vishnu, talk about the film Blink. A warm welcome to TFO, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, ma'am. And first of all, I'd like to invite all the people who are the members of Talking Films Online for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to discuss this film, and also letting me know about this film, which I hadn't seen before. So thank you for that. Before starting, I would also like to thank the director of the film, Srinidhi, for making this film. As someone, not only as someone who has worked in science fiction in an academic sense, but also as someone who likes science fiction cinema, we are like very intensely aware of a certain lack when it comes to Indian cinema, where you can have films, that science fiction films that we appreciate in a certain sense. And I would like to come to what that certain sense is later on. So thank you for that. This is very fresh. I think this is a very fresh and brave attempt, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So before coming to the discussion itself, I would like to put out a disclaimer that since Blink, I felt it to be a very heavy film. Heavy in the sense that there are a lot of things to unpack. There are a lot of philosophical, literary influences in the film. Also, the director has, completely filled the film with a lot of his own influences, and you can see that it is a work of love in the way that it wears its influences on the sleeve. It makes it evident for all of the people who are watching it, and it also leaves a little bit of Easter eggs here and there for people to sit and wonder about and think about, which I absolutely enjoyed. So it is a bit of a rabbit hole, and even now I was like, just before the meeting also, I was looking at things and reading things, and so I have recently emerged from the rabbit hole, and the thoughts might be a little disarrayed, so I apologize in advance for that. So I wanted to, getting into the film, I wanted to talk about certain philosophical and moral concerns that this film has. Also, certain philosophical concerns that science fiction on a whole has. And I thought that at least for the top part of the discussion, I would take the aid of a PowerPoint presentation. So I would like to share it. Please. Hold on a second, right? I figured this out. Ma'am, I'm not being able to share the screen on this. I think it opened on the app. So it's asking me to quit and rejoin. So I wouldn't want to do that. So can I just get on with it?
Okay. Or you can also open in Google Slides and then share the tab if that helps.
Yeah, but it is on Google Slides and it's on a tab, but then my Zoom is on an app, and it is asking me for separate permission for which I have to leave the meeting and reopen. So that's just too much work. So I think I will just,
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, the tradition of time travel movies in India is such that we have had a lot of time travel movies, but they most of them fall into a few set categories. For example, it could be a smash and grab comedy about a protagonist going back to the past to change some event or to affect his own life in a positive manner. For example, Bakshay Kumar movie, Action Replay from 2010. Or it could be just a tourist or a film with a sense of wonder that, okay, there is this new machine and we are going to travel to the past to see the glories of the past, which is the first time travel movie in India, Aditya 369 from 1991, is such an example. Others are more of a thriller nature. For example, 24, the Tamil movie in 2016, or Shri, the Hindi movie in 2013. A lot more of a thriller element, also a revenge element. But what is missing in some of these movies, or most of these movies, is a personal element of the person who's actually doing the time travel, rather than using time travel as something, a technology with a new sense of wonder. These films ignore, in a certain way, the choices that the time traveler has to make and the implications of those choices. And this is where I found Blink to be different, because rather than the wonder of time travel, the film chooses to focus on the choices involved in time travel and the consequences of those choices, which have a very long philosophical tradition of thought behind it. So to come to the film, we have to start with the base text that it has, which is Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. Now, Oedipus Rex can be thought of, in a sense, as a time travel story, because it is an archetype of time travel, in that none of the characters are traveling in time, but information is traveling in time. So Oedipus is told by the seer that he would kill his father and he would wed his mother. So the information from the future has already traveled to the past. And no matter how much Oedipus tries to escape his fate, and no matter how much he tries to act in a moral sense or in a noble way, he ends up fulfilling the prophecy. So this is a this is a category of movies in time travel, which is called stories of inevitable foresight, right? Once you get the foresight, the inevitable consequence is that you will fulfill that fate. Okay, as opposed to stories of preventable foresight. For example, Christmas Carol is one like that, where the person sees a vision and changes his life. Or A Wonderful Life by Frank Capra is another, where the person is shown a certain vision, a certain future, or a certain reality where they are not present, and chooses to, rethink their decision. So in those films or those kinds of stories, free will is intact. But in the stories of inevitable foresight, the concept of free will is not really intact. There is no free will, in fact, and the path that a person has to take is laid out before them. So by free will, we mean your ability to choose between two different decisions or two different paths. Okay, and this brings us to a philosophical tradition called determinism, which sees that all events in the universe, and including human decisions and actions, are inevitable, right? And this is often seen as an opposing thought to free will. So if everything is laid out, then our choices are meaningless. Okay. From determinism, there are other things that this film, reflects, such as the theory of eternal return or eternal recurrence, which states that time repeats itself in an infinite loop. And initially, this was a theory this was a philosophical theory that was put forward by the Stoics, who believed that the universe created itself and destroyed itself in cycles, and each time the universe would be the same. And this idea was again repopularized by Nietzsche, who considered this initially as a thought experiment, then tried to give logical explanations to this, and then thought of it as an ethical question. For example, Nietzsche in his writing in The Gay Science, which preceded Thus Spoke Zarathustra, says, what if someday or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. And there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you all in the same succession and sequence. So basically the idea of life, birth and death and everything and our choices, all of this are meaningless in the sense that we are fated to repeat it again and again. Now, initially he thought of this as a thought experiment, or like a logical conundrum or a question. Then he thought about this to give proof in a logical sense, and also finally he thought of this as an ethical question. If we are fated to do the same things again and again, is this the action that I should do? Okay, should I do this action? And will I be forever fated to do this through all eternity? So would I do a bad thing or would I do a good thing? So the idea of free will and the idea of determinism, that we are puppets of our fate, is spread out throughout history and philosophy. For example, another idea is the wheel of time or wheel of history, which is there in a lot of religious traditions, including Hinduism and Buddhism, which says that time is cyclical and it consists of ages which repeat themselves. This brings us to the question: what can happen if you can traverse through time? And most science fiction films think of time as like a one line, like you proceed from one point to the other point. There are other conceptions of time which think of time as all points of time as real. Okay, but this is what I said, rabbit hole, and I don't want to go into all that right now. But before we get into the film, two more things that I thought that is essential to look at the film is the idea of a temporal paradox in time travel stories and the idea of Ouroboros. So a temporal paradox is a paradox that is caused by time travel. For example, the two most common types of time travel temporal paradoxes are, one is the bootstrap paradox, where this movie is an example for that, where the definition is that anything, an action, information, an object, or a person travels through time and ultimately causes itself as a consequence of their travel. So a person going back in time causes themselves to be born, which is the theme of this movie. And information going back through time causes itself to be true later in the future. This is called a bootstrap paradox. Now, backward time travel would allow information or objects or people or their histories who would come out of nowhere. Basically, this person doesn't exist. It's a chicken and the egg situation, right? So which came first or where did it come from is the paradox of this kind of time travel movies, which is there in this movie. So if Apurva is Aru and Aru is Apurva, then where did the first Aru come from? We don't know. And I mean, that is beyond the point of this kind of a narrative. In time travel itself, there is another paradox. There's a specific variety to this called the predestination paradox, in which the time traveler goes back in time to prevent some event in the past. This is the most famous kind of time travel movie trope, that the protagonist goes back to prevent something. For example, Aru in this movie goes back in time to prevent his own action, right? Which inevitably keeps continuing the cycle until at a point that Apurva ostensibly stops it. Okay. So the another kind of paradox that is somewhat relevant to this is consistency paradox, which is also called as the grandfather paradox, which means that if you go back in your past and kill your own grandfather, would you be alive to go back in time? or the Hitler paradox, which is that if somebody discovered a time machine and went back in order to go back in time and kill Hitler. So once you kill Hitler, the very reason for going back in time does not exist. So did they go back or did they not go back? Now, this is why time travel movies are inherently interesting, inherently a little bit tough to watch, and I expect even more tough to write or make, because it is something that challenges logic in a certain way. And when we are watching a movie that is, intellectual and rational, and you have to think about it, it's based on reason, then there is a certain disconnect in watching those movies, which, I mean, I hope we can talk about that later on. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the concept of the Ouroboros. So the Ouroboros is an ancient symbol which depicts a serpent or sometimes a dragon eating its own tail. Right? It is symbolized often as an eternal cycle of life and birth and renewal. But one thing that I found interesting is Carl Jung's in his collected works, he talks about Ouroboros as an archetype in alchemy, and he talks about how this symbol was one of the central symbols in alchemy, and how the alchemists thought about this symbol. And the quote sounded very interesting and very germane to the discussion of this movie. So he says that the Ouroboros has been said to have a meaning of infinity or wholeness. The Ouroboros is a dramatic symbol for the integration and assimilation of the opposite, that is of the shadow. This feedback process is at the same time a symbol of immortality, since it is said of the Ouroboros that he slays himself and brings himself to life, fertilizes himself and gives birth to himself. So the Ouroboros is a symbol of this eternal life and birth, killing himself and giving birth to himself, which is something that, when you think about the movie and when you think about Aravu and Apurva, they are, or Apurva or Aravu, the same person, is actually an Ouroboros, is the serpent that eats its own tail. Now, coming to the movie itself, I thought that the movie had a lot of, as I said, it is filled with references. It is filled with certain hints at things, or certain scenes which could not have been there, are there, which are could be really well explained by the philosophical thought behind that scene. It starts off itself with a quote which from Sophocles, which in itself is the fundamental question of philosophy, like, what is knowledge? How do we know? So it says, how dreadful the knowledge of the truth can be when there is no help in the truth. And it brings together like two of the biggest words in philosophy itself, which is knowledge and truth. Like, what do we know? How do we know it? These are the questions that keep repeating in philosophy. That is also very central to this film also. For example, in that scene where Apurva sees his alter or his future self traveling on the bike with Swapna. He, after that scene, he there's a voiceover where he questioned himself: are the things I see really happening in this world, or am I seeing things happening only in my world? So it talks about knowledge and perception and how we get knowledge and what knowledge is truth and how do we judge truth, right? Like, where did we have the first instance of knowing what is true? So all of these questions fill this movie. Like, how do you know that a certain experience that you're having is logical or rational, or how do you know whether it is an illusion? For example, he thinks of his own future self initially as an illusion, right? Because there is no rational way of explaining it otherwise. So this is also something which again calls back to the image of the Ouroboros, is how the film is structured, where, for example, in the first scene, we see Swapna and Apurva clasping hands on that beach kind of place. And that is how the film ends. So there is a cyclical nature to the film itself, in that, the thing at the end is where the film is supposed to start. Uh, Again, the person who is self-flagellating, who is seeking arms in the name of the mother goddess, who is also wearing a stormtrooper T-shirt, which I found very interesting, and a mix of influences that is central, like very emblematic of this movie. That person, I found that person to be very emblematic of this movie. So he is a religious figure, and he comes from a religious tradition, but he wears uh, an attire which comes from a pop culture tradition of science fiction, a Western science fiction, which we are also very much part of. This person says that your shadow will ruin you, right? And that is how he curses Apurva. So again, the idea of your Ouroboros or your past self or your future self coming to destroy you. There is again the film. In some places, there is another sequence that I found interesting was a dream sequence where Apurva stands on the steps of the house they have in Rayadurga, and Apurva himself, as a kid, aims a toy gun at him. Again, this symbol of your altar or your shadow killing you, or your altar or your shadow being your progenitor, keeps repeating in this movie. And it is not in such a way. What I like is that it's not put in such a way that it disrupts the storytelling, or it is there for its own sake, or to rub our faces and rub between our faces that there is a certain philosophical consideration going on here. But it seems organic to the story, and I think that is why the story and or the theme works, because these philosophical considerations come across in the movie in a very organic way. Uh, and like the last thing I wanted to talk about, something which I found interesting, is other than the inevitability of it, like whatever Arivu tries to do or whatever Apurva tries to do, ends up reinforcing the fate. So Arivu trying to kill Apurva, or Apurva trying to speak to the master who is his foster father, but then ends up killing him. All of this reinforces the idea of inevitability in the film that I found. At the end of the movie, he says something, the character of Apurva says something very interesting, uh, which is that it might be preferable for certain questions to be unanswered. It would have been better if some things remained as questions. So this again is another uh, consideration of philosophy where people like Wittgenstein have said that the questions of classical philosophy is futile, because there is no way you can know, or there is no way of knowing truth, or there is no way of understanding what life means. But uh, like there is a way of a way out rather than a way of knowing. Feynman, for example, says that rather than understanding the answer, not knowing might be more interesting, because it will open out more alternatives. So he is also talking about not knowing, because knowledge is what dooms him to a certain course of action. Final thing I wanted to talk about, as far as the moral or the philosophical aspects of the film are concerned, is the idea of love, uh, where we are talking about a very rational film, science fiction itself, and or the history of thought of philosophy. All of this are based on reason, but then the film is also talking about love as being an impulse to make certain choices, or maybe love as a thing that makes certain choices inevitable. So we don't know. It is in one scene, for example, Gopal says that love is something that overrides reason, and at the end of this, in a song, and I don't know, I'm depending on the translation given by Prime, it says that you don't need air for existence, but all you need is love. So the movie makes it sound that, or makes us feel that the characters are doing certain things which might be morally questionable, which might lead to them being stuck in a certain fate, but they are doing it out of love. For example, Aru is, going back to 1996 Rayadurga in search of love, because he is alone in his life and there is no more any meaning in friendship or humanity. So he has lost all meaning. So you go back to a previous past to find that meaning, and in finding that meaning, end up causing the same events that you are trying to stop. One thing that you always try predicting the movie as it goes on. I thought that Apurva at the end would not end the cycle, but rather keep the cycle going on, because keeping the cycle going on would mean that the love of his life, Swapna, would stay alive rather than being erased from history. But then he chooses to break the cycle. So that is somewhere, love didn't fit, or else they, I don't know, reunited on that beach scene, which is also fine. So that is what I wanted to talk about the philosophy or the moral choices in the film, and I hope we can talk more about this later on. So I would like to move to another thing, which is the influences it has in myth, not just the myth of Oedipus Rex, which we had already talked about the inevitability of fate. So being giving into fate, things like that, but also the mythical influences in India, or certain religious influences. So a lot of what we see in science fiction is that, especially in Indian science fiction, is that there is always an element of religion or myth, which is indigenous myth, that supports the narrative of science fiction, and not just supports the narrative, but also supports the logic of certain technological achievements in science fiction. For example, in the movie Rudraksha, what is setting off the action is something, a seed that is there from the age of Ramayana. So it is a science fiction story which is rooted in mythology. The first science fiction movie, Aditya 369, which I mentioned, also talks about a mythical diamond from the times of King Krishna Dev Raya, which powers a city in India's post-apocalyptic future. So the past is always there, and the past is ever present. But the past is also part of the logic of the movie. The most recent movie that we've watched is Kalki, and it's all about the past, right? So it doesn't matter what time period it was set in, it could have worked, because that movie, even though it talks about a future scenario, it talks about how the past is very much important to the future. So this movie, it didn't diegetically need the past to support it in any way, but the past or myth, for example, is used as here also as an emotional buttress to put across certain emotions in a better way. At least that is how I saw it. I might be wrong. So, for example, in the scene where Apurva sees this Arivu following him at the bookshop, you see characters from Ramayana. You see Hanuman, and I think it is Rama and Lakshmana walking behind. We see the person who is flagellating himself and asking for alms for the mother goddess. We see another figure, and I'm not sure who that figure signifies, but from the headgear, it looked like a Vodayar king, or I would like to know who that is also. That figure also, who is shown repeatedly whenever Apurva is, caught in, confused in a trance, or caught in some effect of the time travel. We see these figures being repeated again and again, as if to drive in a certain emotion that it. So at that time, he doesn't know the reason behind the time travel. He doesn't know the conceit, the time travel. I'll come to that. But then there has to be a certain emotion that is associated with time travel, that is associated with something weird and uncanny happen. And that emotion is, connected to religion, connected to myth, connected to the past. And it felt like that this is, not something that you essentially get out of, but something that Indian science fiction cinema as a whole is, it is characteristic of it, that you cannot, escape it in any sense, that you make sense of certain things and certain emotions and certain feelings the idea of return, the idea of past, the idea of going back to certain mythical understanding and certain mythical influences. When you come to the reason of it, the novum of it, this follows, for example, the eye drop, that is the reason, and the suitcase. These are all very, technological, technological aspects, but then it doesn't put across an emotion, which unless it is helped by these mythical characters. So last two things that I wanted to talk about was the craft of the movie, also the influence that the movie is talking about. In the craft, I absolutely like, and it's all connected because again, after Sophocles's quote, what we see is Quentin Tarantino's quote that I steal from every movie ever made. So this movie also has a lot of influences, and it shows its influences very visibly, and it is littered with these kinds of callbacks and references. And I'm assuming that the director also wants to show his love for cinema in a certain way. It is set in the way in which Pulp Fiction is set, a narrative which is not in one single progression, but it is split across different timelines. It cuts back and forth, and I think part of why the movie works is how effortlessly and seamlessly these cuts happen, and it keeps us engaged, because most of the time, what happens, how a movie fails is that it can't, even though you're talking about all these things, if you can't keep our attention, and if you can't keep us guessing, then the movie falls flat. I think this movie was very successful in keeping that attention, especially in the when they are explaining the conceit of the movie, when Arivu tells him the story of Bremia and all of that. I found the editing to be very good, how it cut back to 1996, and how we see Aravu arriving in Rayagurgam. Another thing I liked is the use of mirrors, which was, which it is, we see mirror scenes in most movies now, and the mirror is mostly, almost always, a way to communicate the internal feelings of the protagonist, or the person who is in front of the mirror. Like you see, whether you get a moment for the protagonist to look at themselves and see what they are feeling, and we also see it. But here the mirror is used in a way that it foreshadows, because in the first sequence that Arivu meets Apurva, we see Arivu reflected like infinitely in two, opposing mirrors. I found that, a very interesting conscious choice that the director had made. We also see in those initial scenes, Apurva always reflected in a mirror, that it foreshadows the emergence of a future self, and the confusion that comes with it. I also liked, just when we're talking about the craft, that the way in which it parcels out information. Why I thought that it worked as a thriller was that it parceled out information at the correct times, and it kept us guessing. And rather than an explanation for a twist, it would give a twist at the end of the explanation. I absolutely like that. Now coming to the influences, which is the last thing I want to talk about. I found that one of the good things I liked about the movie was that it is a mix of a certain sensibility, which is very appealing. For example, someone like me, where you have, certain cultural and political influences which come together, and you have to talk about it. It's not that whether it is germane to the story, or germane to the theme, but you would like to show your influences, and I like that the story shows those influences. For example, Edgar Allan Poe in that book, which Devika holds in the flashback scene, or all the movie posters in the house that Arivu sits in, or quotes from Baudelaire. Or Agantuka, another thing. So the master story which talks about the time travel is called Agantuka, which I assume is Agantuk and Satyajit Ray. Also, Kuvempu and the tradition of the wedding, I forgot the name exactly, where you take an oath that that eschews all traditions which put men above women. The Schrodinger's cat T-shirt again, another thought experiment about existence and quantum state. So is the cat dead or alive? And there is a point where the cat is both dead and alive. I liked that, all of these influences were worn on the sleeve. All of these influences were left out in the open for us to unpack. There is also a callback to Dionysius, which I found that Apurva was a child who is born from the womb of a dead woman. So is Dionysius the god who is born from the womb of a dead woman, and Dionysius is for whom all these theater festivals were conducted in his honor, where Oedipus Rex, Sophocles, and Aeschylus, and all of these people competed. I found that also really interesting. Last one I found, and again, there are a lot, and I might have missed, and I feel that it should be mentioned that he sits with a book after one scene. He sits with a book titled "That Everything Is Fucked" by Mark Manson, and this book again questions our ability or man's or human beings' constant battle with themselves, and how our attempts at deciphering meaning is futile. So this book has chapters like self-control is an illusion, hope is what, pain is universal and constant. So these are emotions that Aditya, I don't know why I keep saying Aditya, but Apurva is feeling at that moment. I found that all of these things make the story interesting rather than sit at the end of which is our favorite pastime, trying to poke loopholes in a story which is full of loopholes. But rather than doing that, I found it much more interesting to look at the influences, to look at the Easter eggs, to look at the references that the director had made, that the writer had made, and think how it fit into the larger story. And I hope we can have bigger and more coherent discussion on that. And I hope I haven't taken up too much time. So I will stop here now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vishnu, for talking about the film at so many levels. I watched the film twice, once many months ago, and now on Monday or Tuesday. There are so many issues that you have brought up for discussion. The larger philosophical questions that this film raises, to all the intertextual references, that you've done a really close reading as well of many frames and scenes from the film to make the film intelligible. Also, the many layers that open out. I think it's a fairly layered and a fairly rich film in that sense. So thank you for bringing all those up in your opening comments. This is really something that we expected, and we're not at all surprised that you've really brought all these up for discussion today. Srinidhi, would you like to come in and respond at this point, or would you like to hear all the other responses as well to your film and then come in at the end? Whatever is comfortable for you.
The end is fine, ma'am. Even I am listening everything, so
Okay.
I'll react afterwards.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So the film and Vishnu's response to the film are open for discussion. Anyone who wants to come in, please unmute yourself so that I know you want to speak. Yeah, as people are kind of gathering their thoughts on the film, I thought there are two aspects of this film which I thought were very interesting. One is what we think of as the contemporary, the present, so to speak, which is Apurva and his engagements in the theater and his activities, and what is going on in his life with Swapna. So that in itself is such an interesting aspect in the story, in the sense it captures a certain kind of contemporary milieu, the way in which, for instance, Apurva calls Swapna Sappe. I mean, so there is so much of the contemporary lingo that that particular episode. So what begins as a kind of a love story set in an interesting context, the context of theater, where people come together to make things happen, suddenly takes on a very different dimension. Actually, one of the reasons, I thought that we should discuss this film on TFO was also precisely this aspect, which is I don't remember, too many time travel movies in Kannada. In fact, I couldn't even recall a single one. So I was thinking, well, this is a new genre for Kannada, and this is not because there is a clever use of technology and the wonder of technology to make things unravel, but precisely because of the kind of questions that this time travel opens up, the self, the Ouroborosness that Vishnu was talking about. It took me a while to kind of wrap my head around the final explanation, so to speak, as well, as to how the father and the son are not distinct elements, but one leading on to the other, and so on. So in a sense, it was, I thought, the film captured the contemporary lingo, but also captured in some ways larger questions opened up that can be opened up by the science fiction genre, not limiting itself to the magnificence of showcasing the magnificence of technology. We have plenty of films that try and use technology to magnify things. But here, I thought it is being done to raise certain very interesting questions about selfhood, about the nature of time itself, and about the nature of recognition. I mean, how does one recognize who one is or what one is if the temporal moorings of one's self are shaken? So I thought these were some very interesting aspects that the film opens up. Yeah, anyone else now who would like to come in? Fabian, I know, has watched the film in distant Paris. So Fabian, anything to say about the film?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for sharing this film. I really liked it, even if I didn't understand. I understood the film only after 1 hour. The first hour I was thinking, is it a film on schizophrenia? This guy, Apurva, is crazy. He's having vision, and I thought the thematic was a schizophrenic portrait of a man in love with his girlfriend. And after 1 hour, I said, no, this is not the subject. The subject is the Indian context of Oedipus the king. You know, Sophocles' tragedy, as mentioned by Vishnu, and I was happy that Vishnu gave me some keys to understand the film. And Sophocles' tragedy was performed 400 years before Christ. And in Greek mythology, the king of Thebes has unwittingly killed his father and married his mother. And the true meaning in the film, maybe, you will tell me if I'm wrong or not, because this is my interpretation. It is a question of fate versus free will, like the central play. Oedipus tried to escape the prophecy given to him by the oracle of Delphi. Like in the film, there is a guru who says something to him, like a prophecy. So he thought, I mean, the main character thought he was free, but in reality, he's following his fate. And so Fox uses the theme of sight versus blindness. And it is it made me think in the film, you know, when he puts some things in his eyes, some eye drops, and it is really illustrating something, a philosophical question about sight versus blindness. So you have to be blind to really see the world. This is one of the Sophocles message. And it was really interesting. And also interesting because it's mixed. I said, but this is quantum reality. It's a tragedy, Sophocles' tragedy in an Indian context, but also a tale of quantum reality. And the latest physicists' works on quantum reality are very interesting because they try to demonstrate that future, present, past coexist. And the reality that we see, it's only a tiny little things. Because quantum suggests that the part of reality that we do not perceive is radically different. So I saw that it was very inspiring, this mixture of quantum reality and very, very ancient tragedy in the Indian context of a love story. And it was very interesting. And technically, I really like the sound mixing. I thought the sound and the music was so nice and so well mastered. And I looked the film on my computer, but although I looked it only on the computers, I thought, wow, this sound is really excellent. And I like the effects also, like Nikhila said, the effects are also so interesting. And the drones, did you use drones? Because there are some viewpoints. I think it's technically, I really liked it, the way it uses many tools to make us understand what's going on, and that at a certain point you understand that the guy is not mentally deranged. He's not mentally, he doesn't have a mental sickness, but he is in a quantum reality. This was, but I might be wrong. This is my interpretation, but I might be wrong with the quantum reality. So
Thanks, Fabian, for bringing so many diverse aspects and readings, particularly this idea of quantum reality into the discussion. Thank you so much. Yes, Geeta, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks to Vishnu The way he has, really opened up, like Nikhila said, the layers of this very rich film. It's actually difficult for us to come in after that because there's almost, nothing really to say beyond what you have already said. But I just thought the film is, of course, it is about time travel and science fiction and, mythology and stage and a lot of philosophical questions. But I thought it was also equally about cinephilia. I mean, clearly made by a cinephile and also about cinephilia. Those you've all Vishnu has already told us about this, the film posters and the epigraph of Tarantino, I steal from every movie ever made. I thought that was very interesting because it also opens up questions of originality. Is there anything original? And even more so today in the digital context, since each of us has so much access to anything and everything that is made in this world, written about in this world. So this question of the original, what is original, and if we are influenced, this whole question of the anxiety of influence. If we are influenced by something, does that become stealing? So I thought these were some of the equally interesting questions that the film opens up. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Geeta, for flagging those issues. It's a nod to so many, diverse films, also narratives, both in the Indian context and the Western context, but all woven together, I think, so wonderfully well. And also, I mean, there is a reason why something has been brought in. So it's not just a clever nod at things, but I thought it was, there's a purpose. If something is coming in, it's coming in for a purpose. So yeah. Anyone else would like to come in now? Please unmute yourselves and let me know if you want to speak. Madhurima, Sridhar, Tarkeshwar. Yeah, Madhurima, please go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am, I don't really have anything new to add. There is just a lot of discussion about very different topics, which many of those I could not really think when I was watching the film, because the film gave me a certain kind of thrill and curiosity. So that was one of the main things, which is why I was so engrossed into watching the film. And there were many philosophical questions that I think Vishnu sir has already talked about, like parallel realities or the various versions of the past in the way the various characters talk about the past. And also, I liked how Vishnu sir has talked about the idea of time travel and related it with the travel of information with reference to Oedipus. So many of the things were really interesting, and I'm more looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Madhurima. Anyone else who would like to come in at this point? Murali Krishna, sir. Tarakeshwar. Yeah, please go ahead, Tarakeshwar.
Yeah, if nobody else is there, I think Vishnu has aptly described the film, but these references that everybody is talking about, there are too many, and unless you are a party to a certain kind of Kannada culture, you will not be able to unpack it. Whether it is Mantra Mangalya or about a folk song that comes in about the child, which actually comes in also Chandrasekhar Patil's Appa play. And there's so many things which come in. So in that sense, there's a lot of what I would say a kind of craft work that has gone into the making of the movie. As Fabian has also said, the editing and then the shots are also well organized. So in that sense, it's a well-made movie. But still, when you spoke to me about this movie a few months back, I started watching it, and then I stopped off. I couldn't continue it. Though Madhurima said that it holds your attention and curiosity, but somehow I couldn't make the connections in the initial stages unless you sit in one go and then you want to watch it, then you will watch it. Otherwise, if you live in the middle, again coming back to it would be difficult. That's the thing that I wanted to say. Why I'm saying it is, though the film is well made and there are too many things that are happening. A certain kind of quick editing would have been better. Or I don't know. Again, whether you should pitch for somebody who is well versed with these references that come in, or you should aim for some kind of novice who would also take in all those things. So that is a different thing. But for me, it's a personal experience. Though I could understand the references, still, because one or two elements is that though we come to know the film wants to explain it through visuals. So certain things should have been unsaid. A lot of things have been unsaid, but still there is a tendency to put it in visuals instead of simply leaving it as an indication. That's what. Otherwise, I think the film is a good experiment in Kannada and well crafted. And also, as you said, the references, the folk arts that come in, reference to literature, the kind of books that they're reading, the quotations that come in, all these things are well woven. In that sense, it's a well crafted movie. But without these references also, the main point could have been made. In that sense, rather than focusing on the narration, it has focused more on this kind of making it crafty, or a kind of sculpture, fine tuning each and every detail and things like that. In a way, it's good, but in a way, it is the problem in the film, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tarakeshwar. Srinidhi, before I ask others to respond, maybe you would like to come in at this point. You've heard quite a number of responses. Would you like to come in at this point?
No, I'll listen everybody's perspective and afterwards I'll talk. Yeah,
Okay,
if
I'm
there are
not sure if
anybody.
there are, okay, I was just saying I'm not sure if there will be any more responses immediately. But if there are any questions, Murali Krishna sir, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, Vishnu has done a very good job in introducing the film and also referring to various philosophical, literary, and other aspects of the film. Now, one thing, Professor Nikhila, when you are talking, you told that this might be the first film in Kannada language as far as time travel is concerned. But I think there was a film in 2022 by the name Banaras, directed by Jaitirtha. It was also a science fiction film, a time travel film. And I think Srinidhi can throw more light on that. I think that's the film.
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
made by
Banaras, they worked on time loop. And there was another film called Tora Tora. Maybe it was released in 2018 or 2015 sometime. It's a comedy film. There also they have planned some time travel experiments, but it didn't worked out well in box office also in stream also. But yeah, there were only few time travel or time loop related films in Kannada, and there was a maybe Girgitle or something. One among the stories in Katha Sangama. It was a loop kind of a subject. Maybe only few we can see in Kannada cinema. That's what made me to do this film, because there are not so much um, what there are no so many films in this particular genre. So I thought I should work on it, and I should make a film in this particular genre in Kannada, so that in future, nowadays, even the Gen Z generation, they have so much exposure towards this kind of films. I got to know about some time travel films recently, maybe 4 to 5 years before, because but when I ask some eighth standard boy or a girl, they already know these kind of films exist. When I was in eighth, I didn't know there was another language industry also. So no, maybe this will lead to uh, filmmakers to make films in this kind of genres also, because we have potential, we have investors, and now we are gaining some market also. We can experiment in this kind of subjects. uh, yeah, we can narrate some stories. So I thought I should start making sci-fi kind of a film in Kannada. But there were some experiments. Maybe Banaras didn't work out well because it was a wrong time release film, but it was engaging. When I saw the film in theaters, it was engaging. I don't know what happened, but yeah, that's it.
Okay, Sir Murali Krishna, sir, please go ahead.
That was the only intervention I wanted to make. And of course, as told by Srinidhi, the Banaras film did not make a buzz. That's mostly maybe due to COVID situation. I don't know. But anyway, unlike Blink, it did not make a buzz.
Yeah, it was a wrong time placement. Maybe there were so many films at that time, and they would have focused on Kannada film only. They thought they can make a multilingual film. It's a pan India film. That's why it didn't work out. If they have released a straight a Kannada version, maybe it could have gained some buzz inside Karnataka market. Maybe I think it's a wrong time release.
Okay. Any other points that anyone else wants to make? Ruta, Yagnashri, anything else? Otherwise, Srinidhi will start responding. Okay, Srinidhi, I think you can come in. People are here to listen to you. You have listened to our response to your film. So maybe whatever questions that emerged in the course of the discussion, maybe you can start responding to them. Over to you.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed because maybe this is my first Zoom session maybe this is my actual first Zoom session after my Blink, and I have really I have forgotten everything what I did while writing this cinema or while making the film, because I am now concentrating on my next subject. When I heard Vishnu sir's interpretation about a film, even I thought, okay, somebody has noticed the minute details that I wanted to tell the audience. That I found very happy, because whenever we were going for film shows, or whenever anybody who are reviewing our film, they didn't notice so much details that I wanted to tell audience. But Vishnu sir mentioned so much layers that I wanted to represent in the film. And this film was written maybe 3.5 years before. When there was COVID, I thought I should write some sci-fi kind of a subject. And I approached our producer Ravichandra Ajay. So we discussed, and we thought we should make a low budget sci-fi movie for YouTube at that time. So that's why the idea of Blink gone into my head at that time. So maybe after 3 years, when I look back to the screenplay or the story, I found I will find a lot more mistakes, because it was my first film. And in every department I was making some experiments, and I was understanding each and every department in this film. But when film lovers or anybody likes the film, or discuss the flaws, or discuss the positive points about a film, I feel like yeah, I should work more hard in my upcoming films. Yeah, I should make some more layers. And I'm very rooted to our Kannada film culture, or Kannada theatre culture. That's why that replicated in this film. In upcoming projects also, I'm working on the same pattern, but I'm not working on the sci-fi kind of a subject. But I wanted to make a sci-fi that should be a Kannada sci-fi film, that should not be a Hollywood kind of a sci-fi film. It should look like a regular love story that we are showing, a Kannada love story film that we are representing. I wanted to make a sci-fi like that. Even when Lucia came, Pawan Kumar made that kind of a subject. He targeted that we should make the film for our audience first. So he placed multiple songs, and he placed the story. It's a contemporary kind of a story. He planted like that. Even I thought I should not go deep into sci-fi elements or the time machine explanations and all. I thought I should make it's a time machine like a mobile phone. We know mobile phone, we are using mobile phone, and not everybody knows how motherboard will look, what is the space that mobile phone carries, and what MP the camera is. We don't know the complete details of mobile phone. We'll purchase if the camera is good, we'll purchase. So that kind of a treatment I wanted to make in this film, because when I narrated this film to our producer or any actors, they were feeling that it will not work. This kind of subject will not work in Kannada. That's why I wanted to elaborate some things. If I want, even though some scenes I wanted to make it like a abstract imagery, but I couldn't, because I wanted to, because the industry norms, they wanted me to explain some scenes. I wanted to feed audience. That was the necessary thing. Okay, so Sridhar sir had made one text. I'll check out.
Yeah, Sridhar, you want to speak, Sridhar, or you want me to read out what you have put in the? Yes, Sridhar.
No, I'm just appreciating only, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I acted in Oedipus, written by P. Lankesh in Kannada, Dore Oedipus. That affected me a lot when I was in college. I thought, okay, it's a greatest tragedy that I wanted to include that in my films. When I started writing Blink, I thought, okay, I should make this as a tragedy, because pain attracts more than a happiness. We attract more towards negativity. We attract more towards the pain, and we want pain. Um, this is my logic, not we want pain. So I wanted to make this is a tragical film, and when I started writing in the midway, I thought, okay, I should blend Oedipus to this story, so that I thought I will make a Dore Oedipus play converted into a time travel or a time loop kind of a film. And I got so much influence from Ranganayaki, because when I was a kid, I was watching Puttana Kanagal sir and some of the old films, Sidlingaya sir films, Kasarvali sir films, with my cassettes or Doordarshan. That influenced me in storytelling. The character Arivu and all, I got the characters in Betta the Jiva. There will be a character who comes to the old age people, old age couple home. That incident affected me for a long time, so that I created the Arivu kind of a character. The drama in the film, when the 90s portion comes, it's a drama that I took from 80s Kannada films. If you watch 80s Kannada films, you will find the same line of the stories where the protagonist, at one point of the time, the protagonist will understand that who he thought his mother is not a real mother. This is general story at 19, maybe 1970 or 80. In between, there was plenty of films on this particular act. So I took that as influence. And at that time, when COVID hit, before COVID, maybe 2 years or 3 years before COVID, I started watching international films. So, and that Predestination was my film, was the film that influenced me a lot. Like we can change the perspective of the audience by changing the same scenario and by showing the same scenario in different perspective. So I took the influence from Predestination, and there was a film called Primer. It is a very low budget sci-fi kind of a film where the protagonist travels to the future, and he understands the shares, and he will come back to the real time, and he will invest on the good share. It's that kind of a subject. So I got some influence from English films and this Oedipus play, and I wrote the script. Maybe when I look back to the script and the detailing I did, even I thought when sir said it was over detailing, or I wanted to present everything. It was my first baby, right? It was my first film. I wanted to show everything possible that occurs in my mind. So in upcoming films, I should avoid some things. And if you found any negative points in the film, I'm open to discuss, because I want to become a good filmmaker. I'm learning films. Some things, if you found that it is not good, or I should avoid in my upcoming films, you can tell me, because I want that thing. Actually, it's very important for me to grow.
Thank you. We don't do too much of film reviews over here. I think we are all invested so much in cinema. We try to understand cinema, understand what motivates young people like you to make the kind of films you make. We find, all films very, very exciting that we discuss, and particularly films like yours, which really challenge us to look beyond the filmic text to make all these interconnections. That's what captivates us, captures our intellect.
Actually,
Anyone?
I think cinema, while writing cinema, I every scene it's a influence of any other film, because I watched so many films at that time. I was watching 3 to 4 films per day. So at that speed, every scene has a influence of another films, another scene. Even though it is not an intentional work, but replication was there when I was writing the cinema. So Blink happened like that, and the eye sequence. Why I planned I should make a time travel, even though it's a illogical kind of thing. Why I took eye as a symbol for my film, because what the Vishnu sir said, the blind and the um, when we close our eyes. We'll see what is the real world. There is a maybe famous line in P. Lankesh, Sankranti. I don't think, maybe in some play, maybe it's in Gunamukha. I don't know. In some play, I found that line very impressive, and that's the thing. I chose the title Blink also. When we born, will open. Somebody will make us open our eyes. When we die, somebody will close our eyes. So we are living in a blink of an eye moment. So I thought so. And in Oedipus also, he takes his own eyes in the end of the story. What a tragedy I saw after seeing all those things. So everything was connected to I in this film. That's why I chose I. If you want to talk something particular, you can ask me.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Tarkeshwar.
No, it's just to clarify that I did not make it as a kind of negative comment as overworking. It only I wanted to say kusuri kelsa. That has happened a lot. Uh, Attending to the details. It is good if you are appreciating the finer aspects of a statue or a sculpture. But sometimes the overall thing, and what is the right balance, even I don't know, and nobody knows. And as the taste differs, somebody would like to appreciate the finer details, somebody would like to look at the overall narrative, and that's up to them. So there's nothing like, I am not saying it as a kind of negative, I'm only describing the film that I have seen. So it is not in that sense a negative comment as such.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no more comments, it's been 1.5 hours of a wonderful discussion. I hope that Srinidhi has found his time worthwhile being with TFO and listening to all of us responding to his film. Thank you very much, Srinidhi, for I just messaged you on Insta. First on Facebook and then on Insta, and then you readily accepted to be part of this discussion. Thank you so much for spending these 1.5 hours with us. Vishnu, I couldn't think of anyone but you for this film. Thank you for agreeing to initiate discussion on this film today. And thanks everyone for joining us for this discussion. Next week at the same time, actually next week at 8:30. So please note there will be a small change. Next week we will meet at 8:30 for discussing another Kannada film, Hadinelentu. And again, the director Prithvi Konanur will be joining us for the discussion. So I hope to see you all next Saturday on Zoom for another round of discussion. Thank you and good night. Have a
Good
good
And
night.
thank you for
Thank you.
making this happen, because even though actually I was working on some other script, and it gave me some boost to make some. I was in a writer's block. Something was not working at this point of time, and even I got some insights after looking back my film, and Vishnu sir's detailing and his explanation. I have actually, I really forgot so many things after finishing the film, but now it was like a revisit kind of a thing. And thanks for this session. Maybe it was placed at this time to help me to write a better script for my next film. Thank you very much, everybody who made this possible and who watched our film. And thanks for nurturing this kind of young filmmakers, and this will give us so much energy that even though market is not so good for this kind of subjects to write or to make, it will give some boost to work on this kind of scenarios rather than going on a formula or a format based movies in mainstream market. I don't want to make it as a parallel market. I want to create market for these kind of films. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vishnu. Thank you, Srinidhi.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to say one last thing.
Yeah,
Thank you
please
for the
go.
opportunity. Also, to Srinidhi, I wanted to, other than thanking him for the film, I was very glad that he mentioned both Predestination and Primer. And Predestination, is from a short story by Robert Heinlein. So the tradition is very strong there, and I'm glad that he took those influences, and it resulted in a very fine film. And I just wanted to wish him luck on his next venture also. I hope to watch it soon. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you very much, and suggest a film to your friends and families. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.